Hi, and welcome back to The Joy of Ray Tracing, a video series in which we make several ray tracers from scratch. By the end of today's episode, we're actually going to put graphics on the screen, so I'm so excited about that. Before we dive in, here's a list of what we're going to do today. Today's to-dos. First, I'd like to go over the options that we had set for VS Code on the last episode, as well as set two more options that I forgot to tell you about last time, simply because I had installed it a long time ago, and on the fresh install of VS Code for this series, I realized that I hadn't set those. So I'll show you what those two are in a moment. Then we'll go over the HTML basics that we had covered last time, as well as introduce some new items like attributes. Next, we'll touch up our web page, as well as add a canvas element to our web page. And if you recall, a canvas element allows us to draw inside the browser. We'll learn how to gain access to the drawing context from the canvas element, and we'll use JavaScript to do that. Now, I won't go into detail about JavaScript as a programming language on this episode, but we will cover it more in depth on future episodes. Once we have that drawing context from the canvas, we'll be able to issue drawing commands to our browser, and we'll be able to make our very first colored pixel on the screen. And finally, we'll play around with that little rectangular pixel and change its color, its position, and its size. So let's get started. Let's open up Visual Studio Code. And by default, Visual Studio Code always opens up the last file that you were working on. So in our case, it's mywebpage.html. So the first item on our to-do list was to go over the settings that we had set for VS Code last time, as well as introduce two more settings that I forgot about. So go to the left bottom corner and you'll see the gear icon. Click on that. And then click on Settings. And I have a little slide here. So let's make sure that all these settings are set. And so let's check this one first, the color theme. That should be set to Night Owl, no italics. So let's do a search. Up here in the search settings window, we can type Workbench. And by the way, Workbench is like a global setting. Workbench, color, theme. There it is. And it is set to Night Owl, no italics. So now the next item was that we had autosave on, and it's set to after delay. So let's check that real quick. Erase this text up here and type auto save. And that should pop up first, and it's set to after delay. So that's correct. And then we have three options. We had set this one last time, editor tab size equals 8 characters, but we did not set these two, and these are the two new ones that I forgot to tell you about last time. So let's check all these now, and these are under the editor settings. So let's type editor tab and scroll down just a little bit, and the tab size should be set to 8. And we had done that last time. And again, that's personal preference. So I like a big tab size so that at a quick glance, I can see if a line is indented or not. And then here's the two new ones that we have to set. So insert spaces and detect indentation, and they both should be off, unchecked. And here you see insert spaces and detect indentation, and they're both checked. And so I realized that I needed to uncheck those when I freshly installed VS Code last time. So let's uncheck detect indentation and uncheck insert spaces. And all this does is when you open up a new file or you create a new file, it will automatically default to your tab settings, which is the tab with 8 characters. And so it won't do anything funny when you open up a new file or create a new file of your own. And so that covers everything we need to set for VS Code. So now you can click out of settings, and here's my webpage.html, the document that we were working on last time. So the first thing I like to add to our HTML document is a document type tag, and that usually goes at the very beginning. We didn't actually add that last time, and technically it will still work. It will still open in the browser, but it might open up in a weird mode called Quarks mode if you don't tell it what type of or what version of HTML you're using. So let's go ahead and specify that on the very first line. And so click to the left of the left angle bracket and then hit enter, and that'll push all your code down one line. So now it should start on line 2 and then go up to line 1, and we're going to create a tag. So do you remember how to do that, right? So it's left angle bracket, which is the less than sign. And here it is right here. It starts with an exclamation mark, and that means that it's more of a declarative type of tag rather than a functional tag. So let's click on doc type, and that'll go ahead and fill in the tag. Now, this tag, since it's declarative, it doesn't have an opening and enclosing tag. It just has one tag. So it has the less than sign or the left angle bracket, then exclamation mark, doc type, HTML, and then the right angle bracket or the greater than sign. And so this tells the browser right away what kind of document it's about to read. And recall that last time we had created an HTML element, and this is sometimes called the root element because it contains everything else on the page. So the HTML element is all of that, and it has an opening tag and a closing tag. Then we created a head element, so that has an opening tag and a closing tag. Inside the head element, we put a title element, and that's the opening tag and the closing tag. And you can have it all in one line like this. That's perfectly fine. So typically for title and short things like that, we can do it all in one line. And then we have a body element right here. So this is the opening tag and the closing tag. And then in there, we had just put some text. So we had typed hello world, which is the first program for all beginning programmers. So now we're going to add some simple stylings to the page, and we're going to do this in a way called inline styling. And it's actually not the preferred way to add styling to your HTML document, but in the interest of this video, I wanted to keep things short, and let's just add it to the document itself. Now, the preferred way is to have a separate style page called a style sheet, and that is in the CSS language, which is a rule-based language, and it defines how all the content should look on the page. So things like what style it is, what color, what font, where it is on the page, like what position it has, things like that. So we're going to add a quick and dirty styling to this page. So let's go inside the body opening tag and click between the Y and the greater than sign. And now do a space and then start typing style. So S-T, and then it'll pop up right away. So let's click on style. And you can see it populated style equals and then a pair of quotation marks. Inside the quotation marks, we're going to put our style rule. So I want my background color. So let's change the background color. When you click on that, it populates the code for that. And click right to the left of the semicolon. And now we're going to set the background color for the entire web page. So let's do gray. And you can see it gives you a little preview of what that's going to look like. So that's kind of handy. And if you ever wanted to change this in the future, there's a color picker that pops up and you can select a color. So that's pretty neat. So now let's use our live server and go see if our changes made any difference to our web page. So find in the bottom right hand corner, as you recall, there's a button called Go Live. Click that and it'll open up your default browser. And look at that, we changed the background web page color to a nice gray, which is much easier on the eyes than that bright white that we had last time. And the reason why I changed it to gray and not black is because the text itself is black. And so if you had both of them as black, you wouldn't be able to see the hello world words. So now we can see the hello world text here, as well as the dark gray background, which is easier to look at. And now let's add a canvas element, and that'll allow us to start drawing inside this web page. And since this is all about the canvas today, let's change our message to read, "Hello Canvas." And then hit enter a couple times. And now we're going to create a canvas element. So we need the opening tag and it'll fill in the closing tag for us. So remember we push shift and then less than sign or the left angle bracket, and now search for canvas. There it is. Click on that and then press shift and right angle bracket or greater than sign. And now we've just added a canvas element to our web page. I like to put just one small space here, just so I can see where the opening tag starts and ends and where the closing tag starts and ends. And then, much in the same way that we did the inline style for the body element, we are going to do an inline style for the canvas element as well. So let's try that. So click between the S and the greater than sign. Move your cursor right between those two characters, and now press space, start typing style, and it should pop up. There it is. And let's again change the background color. So select background color from the list. And VS Code, for some reason, puts your cursor way over here, so we need it to be on the left side of the semicolon, not the right side. So put it right there on the left side of the semicolon. And then now we can pick a color for the canvas itself. So let's make that black, and then we're going to draw with a bright color so we can see what we're drawing later. So let's make this black. Type black. And that should populate the little preview. So now let's go back and check our web page and see if it shows up. And look at that. Hello canvas. And then it has our blank canvas ready to go. So we're getting there. The reason I made the canvas a black background is because by default, it doesn't have a background color that's different from the background color of the web page. So it would have showed up as gray, and then you wouldn't have been able to see it. So making it this black color allows us to easily see where the canvas is on our web page. And the default resolution of the canvas is 300 pixels by 150 pixels, I believe. So it's 300 by 150. That's the dimensions. So now there's one more thing we need to add to our canvas element, and that's called an attribute. And so we are going to add an ID attribute. So click over here where it says style, and then push a space, then go back one character and start typing ID. And there it pops up. So click on ID, and again, it'll populate the equals and the pair of quotation marks for you. And then inside here, we can name our canvas element to whatever we want. So it's your choice. So let's do my canvas. So my canvas. And so at this point, you can kind of start to see why this is not the preferred method to add stylings to your web page, because if you look at the canvas tag, now it's kind of polluted with all this extra information. And it's kind of hard to see where it starts and where it stops. But just know that the opening tag is still here. So here's the opening tag, because it's got the left angle bracket and the right angle bracket with a bunch of new information in there. And then we have the closing tag right here, which is really short. All closing tags are this form. They have the / and then the matching tag name. They don't have any extra information inside there. The reason why we gave this canvas element an ID name is because that's how we're going to access it from our JavaScript code. So now let's add our JavaScript. And again, we're going to add our JavaScript code in the inline way. And so it's not the preferred way because it kind of clutters up your HTML document code. But just for the sake of this video, I want us to be able to see the graphics right away. So we're going to add everything in line today, and then at a later point, we'll do it the preferred method, which is have a separate file for stylings and JavaScript. So now click on the right side of the canvas closing tag and hit enter a couple times. And now we're going to create a script element. So that has the opening and closing tags that we've done so many times now. So shift left angle bracket, and then search for script. There it is. Close it up with a right angle bracket. And now we do want to hit enter on this one. We want it to be multi-line because all of our JavaScript code is going to go in between these two tags. So now inside of these opening and closing script tags, we can start typing our JavaScript, and when the web page is loaded, it automatically runs the JavaScript for us. Now again, I'm not going to get into the details of JavaScript as a programming language today. All we're trying to do is get something up on our screen so we can see some pixels. And so just follow me for now, and at a later date I will explain everything about what I'm typing. So just follow along with me as I type the JavaScript. So the first thing we're going to do is get access to the canvas element, and we're going to do that by referencing its ID name. This one right here. So How we do that in JavaScript is create a variable called canvas. So let's type let canvas equals the canvas element is inside the document. So we type document, and then to reach the canvas element, we're going to type the dot. And this gives us access to all the document's properties and methods or functions. So let's type get, and you can see it populates this list with get element by ID, and that's the one we want. Get element by ID is a function. So let's type an open parenthesis, and it'll close it for you. And then we want the name my canvas. So you can just copy this, Control C, Control V. It's whatever you put here as your ID. All JavaScript lines usually end in semicolons. There is some debate about that because technically you can run it in the browser without semicolons at the end of your lines, but I like ending all the statements with a semicolon. It helps to see where one statement stops and then the next statement begins. Now this canvas variable that we created in JavaScript holds the canvas element inside the document, and it gives us all the functionality. So now we need to get the drawing context from the canvas. And it's going to be a similar process. So we'll type let context equals, and then we're going to get it from the canvas. So type canvas dot get context, and then an open parenthesis, and inside here put a quotation mark, and we're going to get a 2D context. Now there are other contexts available, such as WebGL, but for this current project, we're only going to be using the Canvas 2D context. So type 2D. Then again, since it's the end of a statement, we end it with a semicolon. Now this variable contains the canvas drawing context, and now that we have that, we can use it as a graphics library to issue drawing commands to the browser. So let's hit enter a couple more times. And now we're going to call the context. So context. And one of the properties of the context is a fill style or a color that you want to fill it with. So fill style equals, and then type quotation marks, and then let's make it white to start out with. And again, this is a statement, so we end it with a semicolon at the end. Hit enter. We're almost there, so this is the last line. So context dot, then we can call the context fill rectangle function. And so that is fill rect, which is short for fill rectangle. And this is a method or a function, so it does need the parenthesis. So type an opening parenthesis and it'll close it for you. And you can see what pops up here. It gives you what parameters this function needs to be able to draw. So it needs an X location, a Y location, a width, and a height. So 4 numbers basically. And remember that we said the default canvas size was 300 by 150 pixels. So let's put this little pixel in the middle. And so that'll be around 150. And 75. And now it needs the width and height. So let's make it a true single pixel. So we're going to do 1 across and 1 down. And again, this is a statement, so we end the line with a semicolon. So now let's go see if it showed up in our browser. And look, there it is, a little white pixel. If you don't happen to see yours, it might be that you need to refresh this. After a while, the live server plugin stops listening so intently, so sometimes you have to kickstart it again and refresh the page. And if you don't see it on my screen, I'm going to zoom in for you now, so Control+. And there it is. Congratulations. We have now made 1 pixel on the screen. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but that is actually a rite of passage for graphics programmers. So let's shrink this back down. And in fact, let me resize these windows so that we can see it update in real time. I'm going to click the File menu over here so I can get rid of the File tab. Now let's see if we can play around with our little pixel. So first, let's make it big so we can actually see it. So change this 1 over here to a 10, add a 0. And you can see it updated. And then make it 10 tall also. There we go. So now we have the beginnings of Pong, right? So also we can move it around the screen. So let's do 100. And it moves over. And by the way, the default coordinate system of images in the browser is that 0, 0 is right there, and then the max width is over here, and then the max height is down this way. So it's a little backwards. The height increases as you go down. Let's just put it in the corner for now. So make these both 0. And you can see it's up in the left-hand corner, and that's where 0, 0 is. So X 0, Y 0. Then we said the canvas was about 300 pixels wide. So let's try like 290. And that should put it over on the way right over here. Then we said the canvas was around 150 pixels in height. So let's put 140 so we can still see it. And there we have the right bottom corner. So it's a little counterintuitive. As you go up in the Y direction, it goes down. So it starts at 0, 0 here, and then goes to 300, 150 right there. Let's put it back in the middle of the page. So 150 and 70. That's close enough to the middle. And then let's make our rectangular pixel even bigger. So 50 by 50. And finally, we'll mess around with the color of our rectangle. So let's try a yellow or red. And magenta. That's always a fun color. All right, so I hope you see how easy it is to start issuing drawing commands to your browser once you get the Canvas drawing context. Go ahead and try messing around with these settings. So change the color, change the position it is on the canvas, and then change the size, and just have fun with it. So that's the best way to learn, is to enter in different values and see what they do to the final image. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. On the next episode, we're going to learn how to resize the canvas, and we'll actually do it in the preferred way. So we'll make a CSS style sheet, and we'll also learn how to make a separate JS file or a JavaScript file that will hold all of our JavaScript code. And that way our HTML document won't be so polluted with all the extra stylistic information and the JavaScript code. I'm really looking forward to doing that on the next episode. So until next time.